I'm your host, Amara Rozgis, Editor-in-Chief of Plant Engineering, and I have connected with John Glenski and Wade Claggett from Salis O'Brien. We're going to be focusing on automation and artificial intelligence today. Thanks for joining me, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, here is some background about my guests, both of whom are experts at Salis O'Brien. John Glenski is Principal, Automation and Digital, and he engages collaboratively with internal and external partners, delivering holistic solutions in smart manufacturing. John is a member of the Plant Engineering Editorial Advisory Board. Wade Claggett is Senior Vice President, Data and AI. His work reflects a balanced perspective on innovation and governance, with a focus on scalable solutions that deliver long-term value. They are both with Salis O'Brien and based in Ohio. So kind of as a little background, most manufacturers know digital transformation matters. Fewer know where to start, what to prioritize, or how to build the internal case for sustained investment. These questions and the answers are designed to close that gap, moving from the pressures driving change to the engineering, data, and organizational foundations that determine whether this all sticks. So, John, I'm going to kick this off with you.
Great.
How are manufacturers redefining the role of automation in response to, let's say, labor challenges, productivity demands, or changing production requirements?
No, thank you, Amara. Happy to be here. And I think, the conversation around automation has definitely changed. For so many years, the business case was really centered around labor savings, optimizations. You automated a task because you could perform it more efficiently, and reduce the labor required. Today, though, I think the conversation is much broader. In many of those connections and discussions I've had with manufacturers, they're starting to share, and this really started, I think, after COVID, that they simply can't find enough skilled resources for their teams. And at the same time, all those experienced operators, the technicians, they're retiring and taking all of that knowledge with them. Because of that, I think automation is increasingly about extending the capabilities of the workforce rather than simply replacing it. And the question becomes not so much how many people can we replace or how can we automate this? It's more about how do we enable our people? How do we enable our people to cover more ground, make better decisions, and share their knowledge and scale it across our clients' teams and operations? So I think that's one of the first big changes or the redefining of automation. And the other shift that I've seen is really with flexibility. I think in every production plant, the requirements are changing faster. Product mix is certainly increasing, and all the manufacturers that we've chatted with need to respond faster to both customers and the market conditions. And a highly automated line that does one thing really well can still become a constraint if production needs change. So we're definitely seeing more of an emphasis on that flexible modular automation that adopts and adapts as processes or products change, volumes change, and certainly right with kitting and really looking for a personalized experience for our clients. And that ultimately changes the design conversation from simply automating today's process to really designing and building an operation that can respond to what comes next.
Okay, so speaking of what comes next, AI is the top of mind for a lot of people. How are manufacturing facilities moving from just discussing AI in theory to applying it in practical, measurable ways on the plant floor?
No, great question. It's certainly an area that, AI has been around now for quite a few years, but the crazy thing, it hasn't been around that long. I think everyone's really wanted to implement AI, and those manufacturers that are really getting ROI from AI are starting, like we all do, right, with the business or the operational problem or the pain, not really the technology. Instead of asking, where can we use AI? the ones that are succeeding are asking, where are we losing production, quality, energy, time, product, and how can AI help us improve that? That's, to me, what really moves the conversation from theory to something more practical and measurable, and ultimately driving back into ROI, which of course is so critical, right, for all the manufacturers. And on the plant floor, I think that often starts with a specific use case, right? Focus in on that one use case. Maybe it's an asset, maybe it's a full production line, some inspection process, maintenance activity, a challenge around energy and sustainability, where there's good enough data, centralized data. I think that's also a key here as you implement AI, and really a measurable baseline, right? You have to be able to tie it back to something that you can show to management, to others, that success. And once you understand the current performance, you can apply the technology of AI, validate those results against those measured baselines under real operating conditions, and determine how it can scale across your facility or enterprise. And when you move past experimentation, and I think a lot of people are still there, right? And you start treating AI initiatives like any other operational investment, define the problem, establish the baseline, measure the outcome, scale what works, AI becomes more than just a buzzword, right? It really becomes an enabling technology. And all of us have used technology, right? We've used automation, we've used equipment and software. So the goal remains the same, whether it was automation before or any type of investment in tech, it's how can you use that tech to drive a better manufacturing performance. So that's some of the areas where we've seen manufacturing facilities move from theory to practical implementation.
Okay. Okay. So Wade, let me shift over to you a little bit here. Still along the same lines of AI, what are the challenges or misconceptions that manufacturers are encountering when they're evaluating or deploying automation or AI or anything along those lines?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what I'm noticing is that the biggest misconception I see is that people tend to treat AI as something that you buy. We've spent decades pivoting the enterprise from the buy versus build discussion, tending more towards buy. And I think we're starting to see with AI that revert back. The cost of building your own things allows you a little more flexibility, because what AI in general and LLMs in particular do is they really reduce the cost of testing, the cost of experimenting. And so your ability to make those evaluations, which I think is a key word here, the calculus has changed a little bit in that aspect. You no longer have to expend weeks or even months gathering data just to create a business case. Now you can spend that same time gathering the data to execute prototypes and test them and see what works and what doesn't. So I think one of the things we're seeing is just a really change in, yes, you can buy a model. You could buy the ChatGPT model of the day or the Anthropic model of the day, but that's not really what is going to move the needle. There's all of us see the stories on LinkedIn of models, rarely in doubt, but rarely wrong, but heavily confident that they're wrong. The other thing I think that people misunderstand in this space is the foundational work. We have spent in manufacturing and industrials over the last 10, 20 years kind of refitting the manufacturing floor, adding more devices that have the telemetry and the sensors that allow them to gather this data on the promise that they would see these huge impacts. But were they operationalizing that data? Were they making the decisions? Were they finding the errors before they occurred? If you've cleaned that, you're in a great position to start that AI journey. If you have not, that's really where your deployment comes in place, is the dirty work of getting your data where you need it so that you can effectively utilize it. It just requires a different layer of the approach. And the third one, even though I mentioned experimentation, is what I would call the pilot trap. It's very easy now for people to create demos and pilots. I've had meetings here at Salos O'Brien where, while a problem is being explained to me, on the side, I'm using Claude Code to mock up a solution. And by the end of the meeting, I can present it. And it looks great in a meeting, but it's not the reality of the situation. It's a prototype. It's, what used to be a wireframe or hand drawn on a tablet. That's what that allows you to do. So that third misconception is it's fun to build prototypes, but you actually have to implement it in the real world. Things like uptime matter, having your machines running matter, and being able to bridge that gap with all those prototypes, find the ones that work and implement them in a production manner. That's really, I think, the biggest misconception that people have to overcome.
Yeah, and that's a great example, Wade. I'm going to follow that train of thought. Everybody wants AI somewhere on the plant floor, but most facilities aren't ready. They're not physically ready or operationally ready, like you said. What does the engineering and data foundation need to look like before AI can deliver value?
Yeah, it's funny. My job title is data and AI, but it's really the data. The data is the one that makes the AI fun. If you have poor or improper data, or it isn't properly modeled in a way that makes sense to your business, the AI isn't going to produce the results you want. It will produce something confidently, but it's unlikely to be the results you want. So making sure that your data is in a good place is huge. If you don't today have the ability to capture the data or generate the data from your floor or from your machines, that tends to be the first step. So the bottom layer there is the most important. It is the foundation. That's why we use the term. So the data is the most important. The second one isn't always the most glamorous. I mentioned the word modeling, but governance kind of goes with this as well. In some places, it doesn't matter. In some places, people think of governance as laws or regulations. But it's also really being able to explain, what does this data mean? Who is responsible for defining what it is? No one wants to have an environment where they can't define what a customer is, or what a project is, or a part is. Being able to do advanced AI and analytics is predicated on having properly governed data. And then the third one, weirdly enough, is also not the AI. It's organizational. There's a lot of opinions, not just coming from the AI, but the organizations in general. It's all over the news and LinkedIn. There's something every day, some new model, some government hacked a different lab to make the model. But organizationally, there needs to be a level of stability and buy-in in what you're doing. At the end of the day, AI, artificial intelligence, large language models, whatever term you use, they're really tools. And we already, in the data and analytics space, or data and AI space, or whatever term you want to use, the way we do work already is just taking what the business does, decomposing it into tasks and decisions, and then using tools to make your tasks faster or more efficient or less downtime, and making your decisions smarter. AI is just a fun buzzword, but the organization has to get past the hype cycle and the buzzwords to really just understand, we're just trying to make better processes, more efficient, more parts, more revenue, less downtime. That's fundamentally, at the end of the day, where we're going, and the organization leads the way. It removes the fear, it clears the fog, and it's what sets that last pillar up to deliver.
So build that foundation, and that kind of starts the whole thing.
Yes, yeah. No organization will be able to get through a collection of artificial intelligence lies, because it burns any capital you would have with your team and trust and everything else. So if you have a good foundation, if you have good governance, and you have an organization that supports the mission, that tends to clear it, so that you can really just focus on the mathematics a little bit, and the tooling. Those tend to be the easier parts of getting these things done.
Okay. So, John, let me ask you then, what factors should engineers or managers consider when they're deciding where AI might deliver real operational value?
Yeah, Maura, I think that's really a key component of this, because, as Wade mentioned, AI can really be transformational, but there's a lot of buzzwords out there. There's a lot of information, and I think it's in the headlines every day. So when you're really looking, where can this help my operations? I kind of boil it down to 4 areas, right, where it can really create value. And it kind of goes back to the previous question, but is there is there really something to solve, right? Is there a problem that you can use this technology and you can really quantify that impact right now, right? Solve that problem right now, whether that's downtime, quality, throughput, energy challenges, labor efficiency, maintenance. It's going to be really difficult to demonstrate value from your AI solution if you don't have that measurable problem. So I think that's the first thing, right? And like everything in manufacturing, identify the challenge and let's apply a solution. You heard Wade talk a lot about data. I think that's a critical component. So for me, that's the second factor that really is fundamental here. And it's not just data somewhere in the facility, right? We've all had projects where we did a lot of work to get a lot of data, but it wasn't usable or contextualized data to support what we're trying to do, right? Supporting the application, whatever that is, on the problem we're trying to solve. And I think data quality and availability and consolidation are still major barriers to scaling AI within manufacturing. And I think for teams that have the ability to understand that early, you can save a lot of time and investment and really do it right once, right? Versus continually making changes to get to where you need to be. That third factor would be resources and teams to act on that information. You can predict equipment failure. You can use AI for a lot of great tools, but it really has limited value if operations can't respond to it. The output that the AI, that technology creates, that information, that actionable insight, it needs to connect to a decision maker or an action that actually improves your facility. And I think that's a piece that sometimes gets lost. And lastly, I think as you look across larger organizations is, can this scale, right? If you solve a problem on a machine or packaging line, it might prove the technology, but the larger opportunity comes when that solution can be repeated across machines, across lines, across facilities, across an enterprise. And that's where you can really start leveraging, the power of the solution. And the last thing I'll add too on this is sometimes AI isn't the right answer. I mean, we all know about over automating. I think Tesla faced that challenge early on, and even, Musk says now that he spent too much on automation, which as a guy who loves automation, I find that hard to believe, but I guess it is possible. But seriously, if traditional automation, basic control strategies, what you have now can solve the problem and solve it effectively, use it, right? The objective for AI or any new technology, it's not to just implement it, right? It's not a shiny object, and it's really to improve the operation using it at the right time for the right problem.
Right. So you both set the stage here. I'm going to throw a really big question at both of you. AI adoption touches everything: engineering, operations, maintenance, IT, safety, you name it. How should manufacturers build that cross-functional alignment and trust so that adoption sticks? I mean, you can't just build it and they will come. How do you make it stick?
Great question. I mean, I guess I'll jump in first here, I guess. I think for me, this is a human challenge, right? Adoption in this instance, and really, I think even if you go outside of manufacturing, it's trust within the team. And it's, at least from what I've seen, and I'll let Wade jump in here too, technology is rarely what kills an AI project, right? Or kills the adoption. What really impacts the adoption is when one group, across that engineering operations maintenance teams feels that something was done to them, right? Instead of built with them. And, for us at Salos O'Brien, I'll share a story, kind of how it impacted us. Wade came to us from the outside, not within industrial consulting. And we did that intentionally because we wanted a different perspective, a deeper experience, right, in digital and AI. But it wasn't just, we're bringing in an expert in some technology and saying to our teams, go implement AI, right? We had to build that mutual trust. And, Wade had to learn our engineering business, our clients, how projects get delivered. And on the flip side, we had to learn from his experience and challenge some of our ways of thinking. And I think that engagement of building it together really made all of us better. And it really relates to manufacturers. And I think you should approach it in the same way, right? Operations, engineering, maintenance, safety, IT, the digital teams, management, they all bring different expertise and backgrounds to the table. And ultimately, for me at least, adoption sticks when those groups that build the solution together and recognize that no single group or function has all the answers. They come to that in a way that drives collaboration. That's when you can really drive the trust, and that ultimately drives adoption.
Yeah, and I'll add on a little bit to the trust because a person in my role coming from the outside, I don't want to spend all of my days in meetings and shaking hands and kissing babies, so to speak. I want to build that trust with them. And I think what goes a long way, even if it wasn't me, if it was any of these organizations, is transparency and even humility. Yes, I have done things in my past. I have been through transformations. I have implemented things across all sorts of industries, but that doesn't mean I suddenly know how to solve all of their problems. I don't, as John pointed out, I don't have the background they have. So yes, while I may interact with them in a manner that explains, yes, we're going to make you feel uncomfortable. Yes, there are things that will disrupt the way you'd go about your day. It will change how your Tuesday looks. At the same time, there's just this level of understanding and saying, I don't know what you know. You have to guide me. You may be a skeptic, and that is the very best thing you can be for me, because I have to win you over. And I don't want to win you over because the CEO says so. I want to win you over because the proof is in the pudding, because we deliver the value. And the way we do that is a mutual agreement and understanding this is the problem we're trying to solve. We're not just doing it for AI's sake. We're not just doing it for PR. We're doing it because it's the correct way to solve a problem. It's the appropriate tooling. And then we all understand that this is the expected outcome. And we walk people through what we're going to do and what they should expect to see. That is a big problem with AI in general. You don't always understand what's happening under the hood. It's a little more black box than other tools in the past. But because of the pace in which it works and the accessibility everyone has to it, it really allows us to build that relationship in a more transparent way, ironically enough. So I think that is the best way to do it, is to understand that you're all in it together and we don't all know more than everyone else. And we're not here to just solve everyone's problems perfectly with this magic tool. The other thing I would add, kind of as an aside, was really the skeptic point. And this may just be from me and not a bigger in general thing. There will be people in your organization who are true AI believers. They use it every day. It's on their phone. They talk to it. And then there are others who want nothing to do with it. Weirdly enough, I find the best people to partner with are the skeptics, are the ones who are unsure. Because if I just told all of the true believers what we were doing, they might believe me without giving any pressure testing or finding the errors, because I don't know everything that they know. So even when we partner to do these things with operations and maintenance and safety and IT and HR and finance and everyone else, it's good to have that openness and that transparency and a healthy bit of skepticism to make sure that we're prudently investing where we should be and getting the outcomes we expect.
Okay, Wade, I kind of imagined you with an AI wand, but thank you for clarifying. All right. So John, shifting gears here slightly. Most facilities have more data than they can act on. They have a lot of blind spots on how their systems perform. How do you close that gap and translate that high volume of data into actionable insights that different people, different roles can use?
Yeah, I think data has been a recurring theme through a lot of our discussions, and I think because it's real, right? You stated it perfectly. There hasn't been any manufacturing facility I've been to in the last 20 years that hasn't had a lot of data. But I think there's a paradox there, is that you can be surrounded by data, but lack the ability to really act on it. And I think a lot of the data was originally collected to control equipment, right? Verify set points, verify ranges, used for maintenance, really tied into a CMMS system. And it only recently has really started to connect into supporting broader operational decisions. So I think that's one area where you got to close that gap if it exists in your organization. And that starts with context, not necessarily more data. It's consolidating that data right into one unified namespace, very common buzzword now, but it's true. And it's because, a value or a data point by itself, it really has limited meaning. But if you can connect it to the asset, the process conditions, product, expected performance, really supporting operational decisions, then it becomes something you can act on. So I think that's a key piece. And then really making sure that the information is relevant to the people using it. I think AI becomes so detached, right? So robotic, for lack of a better word, that it can be used without people. And I think the most important thing here about implementing AI is your people. Because once again, it's just a tool, it's a technology that people can use to make their lives better or make the plant better. And it needs to be relevant as you apply to your own personal use. So plant leadership needs to understand performance and risk. Engineering needs to understand why something happened, what changed. Operators need to know what action to take. The data may be the same, but because of the person using it, the insight needs to be different. And for me, this is where you can really drive the power of AI and the data right into actual insights. So take engineering, the data, AI, they're all coming together. That's the biggest change right now. And so understanding the data is important, but understanding the physical process and how the facility operates is what turns it into value. And that can bring us to where you're grounded in the engineering and operation of your facility. You've got the connected data with those AI capabilities layered over the top. And that to me is where you can drive the most insights across those different roles in the facility. And really there's some amazing opportunities there. And a lot of the facilities that I've gone into and teams that I've talked to, I mean, for so many, the data's there. It's just about connecting it and then getting it to the right person to really make a difference.
Yeah, John, thank you for bringing up the people. That's so important. Wade, let me kind of follow up on that one. When should a company build AI capabilities in-house versus bringing in a partner? What does it look like for that partner? Talk to me about that picture.
I actually love this question because it implies that they should build. And I mentioned earlier how technology has changed in the last 20 years. And one of the things that comes up a lot now is the buy versus build question, which we're kind of even skipping a little here. Major companies are shifting a lot of their budget from buy to build. And I think that I'll tease this up perfectly for this question, because I think in many cases, someone should build. I think when you should build it yourself versus outside, there's a few things you want to look at. The first is kind of, what is your competitive advantage? Now, no one knows this better than you, the person who runs the company or the people who are the experts. You have to be able to assess what are the things you do best. What is your moat? That's a popular word today. What is the moat that allows you to differentiate? What is the knowledge that you have that others do not? Building some of the things in the AI space from prototype to production can become expensive. It is difficult to find talent. So being able to determine whether or not you want to do that yourself and stand that up, or whether you want to work for a partner like us, that's kind of a little bit of a question around how much you're looking to maintain ongoing. AI is not a automobile that you buy and it works for 10 years and you don't have to worry about it. It's still human beings. The technology still changes so much that you have to stay on top of what's happening. So what I tend to do is I tend to advise people what is the amount of customization you need to do, what is your level of expertise and intellectual property, what is the thing that differentiates you, and then establish whether or not you want to invest in hardening that environment and that level of knowledge in a manner that you can use not just as a way to improve your tasks and decisions, but differentiate in your market. You are the expert of your market. If it's something a little more commoditizable, back office cost reductions tend to be one of the most popular, then yes, absolutely look for partners. Or if there's a level of expertise that you need that is outside of your domain, where it would take you longer to source the people versus looking to a trusted partner, then absolutely look to your trusted partner. In this day and age, the pace at which AI disrupts things, spending 6 months on a job search to find a few people probably is not worth it when you can go to a trusted partner who already have them on staff and already have onboarded them into their culture and their technology and their techniques. That's the other question, is how soon do you want to do it? So between the investments and between kind of putting the moat around what you do best and determining how quickly you want to do things, that tends to be a little bit of the lever as to building it yourself in-house or bringing in a partner. But it doesn't preclude one from the other. You can always bring in a partner while you're trying to ramp up and then reach a bridge where you can hand things off. That works as well too. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer, other than time is of the essence, and don't take too long to decide which one you're going to do.
Right. Well, then, Wade, how should companies build the business case for smart manufacturing investments in a way that works for both operations, executive leadership? What does that look like?
That's a great question as well. So you're kind of really building two different business cases for the same investment. While operations and executives sometimes speak different languages, being able to pitch something that bridges the divide tends to be the unicorn pitch, if you will. For operational leaders, I think what you need to focus on is what impacts them day to day. They're the ones who are actually in the factories doing the work. It is their uptime. It is what they're judged on. It is how they start and end their day. Better yield, less scrap, safety, more safety, doing things that make it easier. That tends to be their pitch, if you will, the angle you approach with them. It's a little bit tactical in how you do things. For the executives, sometimes it's as black and white as capital. What's the ROI? Are you going to get a return on your investment? Not every time does either group even understand the full AI or the technology solution you're discussing. So being able to paint a picture for them and tell them a story that brings them on that journey in the language that they speak is that kind of other business case. And it's not just the short term of a day-to-day, it's also long-term. What is the capital investment? What will it be like in 5 years if you can make that determination? So there is kind of two business cases in there. But I think if you have kind of the right people and you take the time to think about what you're doing, there's a unifying vision that, to our earlier point, builds the trust so everyone is still pulling in the same direction. The one thing I would avoid, I would add on at the end, and I've mentioned it a few times, don't just do these things because it's cool. I know it's very in vogue right now to talk about AI and all of the fun things people can do, but prudently speaking, I think both groups, operators and executives, should avoid any trap where they want to do things because their college buddy did it at their company on LinkedIn. I think it's important to really focus on the business you run at the end of the day, and do it for that sake, not just because it's the fun new thing.
Terrific advice. Thank you, John. Thank you, Wade. I appreciate the conversation today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great.
And that was John Glenski and Wade Claggett from Salus O'Brien talking about several aspects of automation and AI and what to think about for your facility. For more information on automation, AI, and plant floor operations, please visit Plant Engineering at plantengineering.com. Thanks for joining us today, and goodbye.